Thank you for doing that. Very warm welcome, Game 3 of Group C of the November Casual Tournament. In this game we have Trap Penguin, Macross, Elmin and Dryad. Macross has 1 point, I think the rest are still on 0 after the first 2 games. And this is a little bit more of a conventional map. Again, there's not a whole lot of water, and I think that seems to be the main limiting factor here.
There are no nukes at this point. There is a fantastic spot right above the colony for a scavenger, and that's where I think I would be leaning very heavily because you've got water that's super close. You've got your right there, exactly where
Macross takes it for 14. Dryad found, he was obviously looking at that independent. Actually, Dryad found it first. He found it at 16 in the top right-hand corner. That doesn't seem like it's such a good spot, just because you don't have the aluminum nearby that you really need to. I mean, he's robotic, so you'll need half the amount, but still, you don't have that consistent supply of it. There's another scavenger gone down. Trap Penguin has got a slightly worse scavenger, but still an okay scavenger next to the water. Again, the limiting factor there is the aluminum, which Macross has next to his base, and indeed he is the first to. Elmin's found is kind of interesting. It's sort of something a little bit different. The expansive, it's a very slow start for him, but again, expansive against a robotic and 2 scavenger in the late game will outscale quite significantly.
So here's the negative for Elman. I bet he didn't expect Trapping to eat his lunch essentially and found in that water patch. Unfortunately for Trapping, that was a chance where he could have gotten the high water. You know, I probably would have done the high water and a medium water and just tried to take those water profits, even though it's not connected to my base.
Yep, I tend to agree as well, because water started high, so anything that goes into water is really good. Macross has gone into chems level 2.
Which is great.
Which is
actually
really
look at how
good.
much they're making money.
Yeah, lots of money he's making there. So he's in a little bit of debt, but he's got all the resources he needs to upgrade. He's bought his glass. He's definitely ahead in this early game, and he's making chems on the side as well, which is just making him a bunch of money.
I would like to point out that everybody else, out of everybody else, Trapping was the last to found, and yet in my opinion, he got the second best spot. Because he's so close to the water, which is super high. The only thing he has to ship a long distance, which is aluminum, and that's going to hurt a little bit for fuel. But I mean, it's not too bad right now while fuel prices aren't that high.
I want to say something. I want to say something about this whole aluminum situation as well, which is a pretty big nightmare for both Elmin and Dryad right now.
Yes.
Certainly, Dryad is making no aluminum at all. It's now at 110 with that latest upgrade. Trap Penguin going to 3. So yeah, it's going to be really difficult for both Elmin and Dryad to get to HQ4 with the aluminum as it is.
So one thing that I would like to see out of Macross is take that medium aluminum right there, right next to your high aluminum. With 104 a second, it's going to help you not only upgrade so much quicker, but you can also transition it into either wind or solar panels later on when you want to get some power.
Yeah. Very good point. Yeah, I think wind is really good for him, particularly being the scavenger.
The other thing is, I noticed that Trapping still has the 2 water pumps and is okay. Now he stopped auto selling, but this is actually a good time where what I would do is water's only $8 a second. Buy 100 of them, and buy 100, and then convert one of your water pumps over to food or something that's really profitable.
Yeah, I think that's a good move generally when a commodity of whatever is in single digits. Just buy 100 of it. Like, it's going to be more expensive at some point in the game. Like,
Absolutely.
there's so little cost to doing that, and the payoff can be really high.
And the other thing you can do is look at how much water is being produced versus consumed. If you look at Macross 42, he has no water goods, and yet he's got a medium and a high water. So he's putting out a bunch of water. You've got Elman has his water as well, but he's consuming about all of them. And then Dryad has water, but he has a bunch of water, but no water goods too. So that's a great place where Trap Ping can definitely rotate that one water out for food or something like that actually is going to make them money, knowing that other people are going to be selling down water and helping those to stay profitable.
And you know that as soon as they're able to, other players are going to get into water goods, like there's
Yes.
an electrolysis triangle for Macross just gone down. A bunch of farms for Trap Penguin. There's going to be another couple of farms for Dryad in the top right-hand corner. So you need to get in on that market first. Like speed is really important there,
Yes.
and that's what Trap Penguin did with that move.
So let's take a look at. We haven't talked too much yet about Dryad, so let's take a look at his base. He has on the positive side, he has he has a triangle and a half. He's got the close water, which is good. The negative in this case is that I think he went a little bit too much into water too early, and that's helped crash the water price. And now he has 2 tiles away from his base that are kind of not really helping him. Furthermore, he took a long time to get into power, and so he's not anywhere near paying off all of his debt and making money off of that. And now he's got to have he has 3 dead tiles, unfortunately, for steel.
Yeah.
This is a good time where yes, you need steel, but you could repurpose these tiles because it's really cheap to put them back up. So putting those into
that's
something
right.
like putting them into reactors, for instance, would be fantastic. Those would make a bunch of money.
Yeah, and the glass situation is kind of interesting as well, because glass is needed for 3 people's upgrade. But there's only, I think, 1 silicon tile on the map at the moment being used, and that's Elmin in the bottom left-hand corner. Everyone else is tucked away in this top right-hand corner, and all of the silicon is down in the bottom left. Pretty much max distance
Yes.
to be used.
Oh wait, Macros has a high silicon, and then Elman is going into a high and a low silicon. One thing I would caution players is be really careful with anything like a silicon or something like that. A carbon, if you're a non-scavenger, be really careful in terms of taking 2 of those if they're far away from your base. It's really important.
Elmin's
Oh,
getting
yeah.
teleportation. And
he's getting
he is
teleportation.
going to
Okay,
get
so
it.
that's totally
He
fine.
is going to get it ahead of Macross, who's also researching it. He's not going to get it though, unless he freezes out the pattern lab.
However, I actually I'm still gonna stick with that same point. Taking the second silicon in that case, I still don't agree with, because yes, it's really profitable right now, but in a second that power is gonna crash out, and even though you have teleportation, you have to send everything all the way out, and then you've got to wait for the build time, and then
Yeah, maybe. I think it's gonna. I mean, I feel like it's gonna stick around though, silicon. And certainly he's gonna get the lion's share of the profits from that, just because glass is in pretty high demand, and it's a glass colony as well. So I think there is some value in that. I think maybe taking the 2 is a slight overcommitment. But again, Macross has taken 2. Just next
and then
to him.
you look. Trapting has a commitment for he has a mine that's going all the way down for a high silicon too. So what is
Yeah.
going to happen is everybody else has gone into it too and made the same mistake.
Yeah,
and
that's
now
true.
that's going to crash the price out, and you have 2 tiles that are really far away from your base when you could be using them for other things.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, perhaps the one was enough there, as it were. He is
Yeah.
still going to benefit from that whole series of events overall as Elmin,
Yes.
more than the others, just because he was first.
He definitely will. I think what'll end up happening though is expansive. The nice thing about it is he's expansive, so he has some extra claims to give.
Yeah,
So that's the one good thing about that.
and I
but
think
again,
honestly,
later on,
Elmin's in a very good position overall. I think he's weathered the early expansive storm. He's basically kept up in upgrades. He did get the teleportation. And really, like, only Macross is level 5. He's bought a bunch of his stock as well, so he's protected for the time being. And he's second to level 5.
and he just did a fantastic thing. Look at Elman's base, and he used one claim to connect both of those. So
and
now
he has superconductor.
He doesn't even have to put anything in there right now. He could get the benefit from that, and then he could just take the claim away as soon as power crashes, and that would be totally fine if he doesn't want to put something there.
That's really smart. I hadn't spotted that, but yeah, that's really impressive. What are Offworlds like? They're not quite as good this game. Still not too bad. 30,000 profit for the food launch, but food's kind of at a low point at the moment, so it's not going to get too much better than that in the short term. So still worth thinking about, but not the imperative that it was in the last couple of games that we've had.
And if you look at it, it's about 65k for macros to go into an off-world, and it's about 58k for all of the other steel.
Yeah, that's not a whole lot of money.
Factions to go in there, so it's not too bad. The thing that you have to consider though is you've got a lot of goon killers there. You've got an EMP, you've got a circuit overload, you've got network virus, and you've got a mutiny. Fortunately, the
Thinking Machines has already gone as well. Trap Penguin took Thinking Machines, which was very smart, given how much black market there is in this game.
Let's see. So Macros 42 is the first one here with an off-world market, and it's a hologrammed one, and
and it's frozen, and it's still under construction. So
it's
I wonder
frozen,
if
but
seen
nobody
that.
knows about it because there are no spies.
Yep, that's true.
And he's actually, I'm trying to figure out if that's a decent positioning for that off-world market. I would say it's not the best position.
Yeah.
I would rather have it farther out, to make it look like it blends into something and not to get hit, someplace where it can't get hit easily with an EMP.
Yeah, you want to put it as one of a triangle rather than as a little adjunct onto a triangle that is kind of a bit awkward and just screams off-world market to anyone who's played this game at a reasonable level.
And one thing I would say in terms of off-world market placement, particularly when there are spies in there, think about how you structure your colony, and if you can put it just outside where a spy would be able to detect it. Like for instance, if there were spies on the market and he stuck it to the northwest above that food, then a spy near the middle wouldn't cover that off-world market and it wouldn't expose it. And when you don't have thinking machines, those are the kind of things you can think about, because you don't have to locate it right next to it, because everybody's going to look right around your base. That's just a natural inclination for everybody to look for off-worlds right next to your base.
Yep. Speaking of off-worlds right next to the base, Elmin has put one down right next to his base. And it has just been spotted by, well, it's not necessarily been spotted by Trap Penguin. I don't think he knows, but he certainly suspected. He put a network virus down onto that tile, and in fact it has been spotted because it's still building. Very obviously he knows that that's an off-world market, and also Macross's off-world market has just been revealed.
And that's another thing right there where he doesn't have thinking machines, so there's no real reason to stick it right next to your base. And as a matter of fact, your off-world markets are going to get found even easier if you stick it right next to your base. So that's a really important thing
That's
to
his
remember.
Second off-world market that was just revealed, that he's got just below his base. Elmin's off-world market has just been revealed as well. So yeah, they're going to get some black market very, very soon. So who's in a good position here? I think Elmin is in the strongest position by some distance, being expansive.
Yes, he has a bunch of things that are still making enough money. He just got out of his chems, and I would like to see him go into the reactors because they're so profitable, and they are. Let's see what optimizations people have.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. So Trap Penguin has a bunch of different things, which I like a lot. Dryad has gone for full food optimizations, which is a little, well, I was going to say a little bit of an overcommitment. It's not a little bit of an overcommitment, it's a lot of an overcommitment. It's even though food is a launch and it's sensible to prioritize optimizations of whatever the launch is, 4 in the same thing is way too much. That's such a large commitment, because you get less benefit for each pip in terms of a percentage increase, and it's like 20 extra chems for each one. So yeah, that's too much.
I completely agree. Um, so I did notice though that Trap Ping is going into his second off-world market, and he has thinking machines. So, and he's in
Yep.
a better debt position, say, than Macros 42, and I mean, Elman seems like he's in the best position, with the exception of the fact that his off-world has been exposed, and you've got two scavengers that can take that out really easily.
Yeah, that's very true. Albeit with thinking machines, so the benefit is much less. Um, but yeah, he's actually mutinied away the other one from Elmin. So he has two, and he's about to cede control of the second one again. And it's actually going to be kind of difficult for him to get the second off-world market for himself, just because he's not making that much carbon. And he's only got, what, 100 or so, and the price is reasonably high. So it's going to cost him quite a bit to do that.
I would like to point out, Macros has done something that is extremely near and dear to my heart. He is the only one here with a pleasure dome, which is making 351
Oh
a
my
second.
gosh, yes, wow.
People don't understand that pleasure domes are so good, and I'm okay if you don't wanna do that, because that just means more pleasure dome revenue for me.
That's an insane
But
pleasure dome as well, with the expansive and
they're
the two
so
scavengers.
good.
That's very good.
Yes,
And
they're
yeah, by
so incredibly
himself.
good, and it's
He's
not
got
even
virtual
being bordered
reality
by that
too.
things.
He also has virtual reality and perpetual
Yes,
motion for extra pleasure dome efficiency goodness. Um,
absolutely.
so yeah,
So he's making 351 a second, and it's only costing him 86 in power.
yeah, that's pretty good.
Fantastic.
It's pretty good. And actually, I mean, he's in a decent position now. He's bought all of his stock. He's got a
Yes,
bunch of money with which to attack somebody else. There's a
and
bunch of players sitting on a lot of money actually that I think I would have done something with by now.
yes.
Trap Pingving's aluminum is rather expensive and liable to crash at any point, I think. He's using his water, I guess, but he shouldn't be using his water because those electrolysis reactors, of which he has 4, 5, are
Uh-huh.
losing a bunch of money. Losing,
Hmm.
yeah, $40 a second,
Mhm.
which is a lot of money to be wasting on 5 claims that you're using.
So I will point out, one thing that the Dryad is doing right now is he's trying to make his money on world, but if you notice his base, he's going full on into food. Now remember, he optimized it 100%, but he's also consuming a bunch of water. He's negative in terms of water, and I think that's really going to end up hurting him. Also going to end up hurting him is everybody else has off-worlds, but he hasn't gone into an off-world yet.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it's just not making enough money. I mean, it is sensible. As I said, I like the idea as a whole to
mhm,
make sure you prioritize the for optimization the thing that is the launch.
mhm,
But in this case, this is much too much of an overcommitment, both in terms of optimizations and in terms of the volume of farms that you have down.
mhm,
It's just too much. It saturates the market. Like you're making 16 food a second. Like that's insane. That's the highest
mhm.
number I've ever seen next to food in this situation.
S- So let's take a look at this. Macros goes really high into trapping, and I like the fact that trapping's in D debt and has a really good water situation too. So he's actually going to be a really good subsidiary.
Mm,
And you also take out a scavenger that can mess with all of your off-worlds, pop your goons, etc., etc.
yeah, and has
Um,
thinking machines.
yes, and has thinking machines. He's going to be, even though scavengers don't get quite as many claims, the fact that he has all that water there is going to make him a very good subsidiary. Ordinarily, I would love to go after Elman, but I think that based on Trapping's position as well as where he is in terms of debt, this was a good move.
And something else I want to point out is that Trap Penguin has bought 4 claims from the market, so he actually has quite a lot of claims. He might even
Ah.
have as many as Elmin,
Mhm.
who's the expansive player. So yeah, and I think a lot of this, honestly, I think a lot of this is the Pleasure Dome money. Like this Pleasure Dome has
Yes.
been unmolested for a long time. It's basically an off-world in terms of what it's doing. $400 a second. Is that roughly what an off-world makes? An off-world would make math on stream is always a bad thing to do. But yeah, 40,000 profit divided by 60 seconds. Okay, so an off-world's a bit more than that, but not much more. So off-world will be something like 600 a second.
Yes.
But yeah, Pleasure Dome is a good. This Pleasure Dome is a good 400.
Wow. And you know what? And it's only getting better because the power is crashing out.
Yep,
So,
it is.
build your
And-
pleasure domes, people. Build your pleasure domes. The only negative thing about Macros at the moment is that he's now getting targeted by everybody because he's the clear later. Fortunately, he could complete the buy if he wanted to. I don't know why TrapPing isn't going after him because he certainly has 425k to have tried to buy into him and raised his own stock price to push the goalpost a little farther away.
Yeah, he's also stopped launching as well to try and do that. He's restarted it again now. But yeah, I think I think he could have committed a bit more to get that by quickly. Elmin straight into Macross. He should maybe have looked to do that a little bit sooner when his stock price wasn't quite so high.
Yes. Elman was sitting on cash, but what the mistake he made was you need to start buying into Macros before he completes the buy.
Yep.
That way you get a cheaper couple of stock. And Macros is so heavily into TrapPing that he's not going to be able to sell out and attack you instead. So you have to kind of stab them in the back before they complete the buy, and then that puts you in a better situation.
So now it's about who can make the most money.
Yes.
And I think in terms of claims, they're quite similar actually, Macross and Elmin, because again, Macross bought 4 claims from the market, and Elmin's not bought any. In terms of optimizations, they both have water very, very heavily optimized. They're actually very similar. The only real difference is that Elmin's committing into electronics, which are fairly profitable. But otherwise, it seems like it's a fairly even fight in terms of the amount of money that they're both making.
Yes. Unfortunately, it'll be interesting to see if TrapPing is quite as profitable as we thought he was going to be, because the water situation I thought would be good, but of course it's crashed out now.
1,300 already is still not bad at all.
It is. It is good. The question is, will he be profitable enough in order to make up the ground? Because he still has to buy 3 shares.
So yeah, the amount of money that they both need. So Macross from this point needs what, 8 times 50-ish, which is going to be 400 or so.
400k.
Sorry,
And
doubled that, so 800.
Stocks, so.
And yeah, Elmin needs 620 or so to buy Macross. So yeah, they're about even. I would say they're about even. The off-world
Elmin's
mutiny
off-world
comes in.
Yeah. Oh, Elman mutinies the off-world, and that off-world, that's actually pretty. That's actually pretty decent. That's a good move because you're looking at a 56k launch, and he paid, what was it, 90 or so K, but more importantly, it steals that away for the entire amount because Macros has ignored the debt, and now he's in C/D range.
Yeah, well, I mean, mutinies as well. I mean, mutinies are 110 right now, and he doesn't have one in his stockpile, so he would have to pay a full 110 in cash for that mutiny, which is I don't know if that's worth it off the top of my head. In terms of,
It is
so
not.
he's going to get yeah, I mean, he's going to. It might even have been if he'd done it immediately, because he's going to get 2 launches off that Elmin, which is going to be, what, 100,000 in profit that he's getting and that Macross is not getting. So a delta 200,000, which is...
Remember, he pulled, he was in D debt, so first he had to pay off some debt in order to be able to then pay 110k.
Yeah.
Really what I think I would have done is, I mean, if he was close to the D debt range, pay a little bit of debt to get down to C instead of D, but I'd rather have that cash because this is going to be, it would be a close enough race. That was a fantastic mutiny on, that was a good observation on Elman.
Yeah, it
to
absolutely was. And this is really close. Like Elmin's stock price might not be high enough, and actually Dryad has a bunch of money as well. I guess he doesn't have quite enough money, but still he has a lot of money. I think Macross is probably going to win this race.
Yep, it looks like it. He's at 92% or 94%. So that was a really good move for Elman to try to do this. But yeah, that the subsidiary is
Yeah, it's very
2.6.
profitable.
So it's finally kicked in for him. So it was all a matter of being able to stall long enough for that to be profitable. I wasn't sure if it was going to be enough or not, but
Yeah, and it's the late game expansive advantage basically cancelled out by the fact that Macross bought a bunch of claims.
yes.
Which has helped him out. So I think Macross is going to get this by very, very shortly indeed.
Yep.
One more launch, unless he wants to sell out of a bunch of stuff.
He probably needs to just go ahead and cancel it in case, because I don't know how close Elman's launches are.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I don't think it matters. Yeah, I mean, there's one in 5 seconds, but I don't think he's not going to get enough. He's still a good 120 short. There it is.
Yep, there we go.
There's the buy, and I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Dryad needed to get involved in some of that because Macros is just going to have such a low target.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that you have 700 or so K. Like it's already evaporated. Dryad only has 100K and not even all of the stock, and it's still going to be.
Yeah, he needs
it's still gonna
basically
be a
another
bunch of
$1 million
money.
to buy Macross out, and Macross needs what, 400 or so, something like that.
Yes.
Compared to what he has at the moment. So yeah, this one's in the books, I think, and the earnings advantage that Macross has with his two subsidiaries as well, getting an extra 3,000 a second, which is a nice amount of money to have just for free.
So look at this, the wild card Macros coming out of there, and
Yep. Well, he's
I
going
would
to get.
venture to guess that a lot of people don't know who he is yet, but they definitely will now.
Yeah, well, you definitely called it based on those games that you'd played against him, and yeah, he's not let us down. It's going to be his second win of this tournament so far. He took one earlier on in the first game, and I've not seen the other results yet. We'll fill you in as soon as we know. You can check out the other streams that are happening, Zoltar's stream and also Dawn Blues' stream, and Yarand as well, who are both covering Group B. But yeah, this one's over.
Let's talk about some of the players and what they why they did well and what they could have done differently. We'll start with the person that's going to win Macros. The nice thing about this is this was the best spot on the
Yeah,
map.
and it was the best spot by a long way. I mean, we said at the beginning that, or yeah, you said you pointed this spot out, and it basically has everything you need. So, just looking at the tiles underneath it, you're founding in a field of carbon. You have an aluminum spot nearby, and you have water nearby. And if you have those three things as a scavenger player, that's
Yes.
basically all you need to get yourself to HQ5 in a hurry.
Yes. And it is worth noting, of course, Elman did have teleportation, but Elman was able to get by with the one high water and then put another high water on there, and so it worked out a lot better than I thought in terms of his positioning. I was a little bit skeptical in terms of the difficult water situation and having to ship the aluminum all the way over, but. He did a good job in terms of his found and using the expansive advantage to be able to put those off worlds down early, and just wait for Macros to be able to take out Tratping. It just he fell
Yeah,
a little bit short.
And I feel like if he'd managed to get even a couple of those claims, and just been able to stem the tide a little bit from Macross buying all of them along with Trackping Bin, I think that might have made a difference in the late game as well, because that was that was a big that was a big deal. Like the fact that you're a scavenger and you have as many claims with all the early game advantages that you get, like that's a really big thing.
Yes. And then Dryad, what we would say for this is the biggest thing to correct. There are a lot of good optimizations. The only thing is that and I'm actually I'm looking at the wrong one. Here we go. The optimizations the negative is there was perfect water and perfect food. You very rarely want to go into perfect, as Tara said before, because it's just so expensive to do it, and as you do more and more optimizations, you get less benefit from it. So rather than have one thing researched, fully researched, maybe, you know, two of them 50% researched, essentially. That's going to give you a lot more benefit. Plus, it spreads out the risk. As you can see at the end of the game, water's $11, food's at 44. They're fully researched, so you have all of this money tied up into something that's not making you money anymore.
Yeah.
So spreading out the risk a little bit more, you know, and plus you get more benefit for it. So.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you know that other people are going to be prioritizing food. Before we go on to trapping, then, this pleasure dome, without looking, how much do you think this pleasure dome made over the course of the game?
I'm gonna tell you that it probably made a good 450K.
Well,
right?
you're not far away. $389,000.
Yep.
Which, I mean, that's a reasonable investment. I'm happy saying that's a reasonable investment. Given that, like in total off-world money, okay, he made 1,100 in off-world money. But like that's a good that's a half an off-world right there. Just insanely good, and you don't have to do anything to it. Like it's just there.
He made from entertainment revenue for 389K. He made almost half of a subsidiary.
Yeah.
For just that one tile for the entire thing. People, put your pleasure domes, but if you don't want to, again, I'll take them all. No big deal.
So so Trap Penguin, in his found, I think it was a reasonably good found. I was reasonably happy with this. I think the one problem he had was the aluminum, and he was shipping that a long way. But again,
Right.
like, you know, if you have
That was the
carbon
only thing
and
he
you
was
have
really
water,
shipping.
yeah, exactly. Like if you have carbon nearby, you have water, you're all set as a scavenger. Like you don't need anything else.
Yes.
And he did a good job of buying claims. He was just pipped to the post by Macross, who'd had a slightly better found and had done those things slightly better.
So Trappington bought 4 claims, Macros bought 4 claims, so that essentially, those two right there, nullifying the expansive advantage for the most part.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got 2 really strong scavengers, and Macros buying Trappington and taking out somebody that not only has thinking machines, as well as has just about the same amount of claims and is sitting on good water. You know, that ended up being a great buy.